نفعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامسون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كما أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة وأحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى دخل الجن القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد ضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نؤمره ننكس في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويهك القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون ولا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون سبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم. الله روح المؤمنين والمؤمنات صوب الفاتحة.
نشاں تم کو دکھاؤں کیسے، تم نہ پہچان سکو گے، دیکھ کر مجھ کو کہو گے کیا میری زہرا یہی ہے، تیری زہرا پہ مصیبت کی گری ہے، یہ اذیت یہ خاموشی نہیں دیکھی جاتی، مجھ سے تنہائی علی کی نہیں دیکھی جاتی، تیرا پیغام سنانے حق ولایت کا بتانے، زہرا گھر گھر میں گئی ہے، تیری زہرا پہ مصیبت کی گری ہے، ہائے بابا تیری زہرا پہ مصیبت کی گری ہے۔ محمد وال محمد صلوات۔
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا عدوي وعدوكم أولياء تلقون إليهم بالمودة وقد كفروا بما جاءكم من الحق، يخرجون الرسول وإياكم أن تؤمنوا بالله ربكم إن كنتم خرجتم جهادا في سبيلي وابتغاء مرضاتي تسرون إليهم بالمودة وأنا أعلم بما أخفيتم وما أعلنتم، ومن يفعله منكم فقد ضل سواء السبيل، إن يثقفوكم يكونوا لكم أعداء ويبسطوا إليكم أيديهم وألسنتهم بالسوء وودوا لو تكفرون، صدق الله العلي العظيم. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The verses I've just recited are from Surah Mumtahana, which is the chapter number 60 and has 13 verses. The verses I recited are the verses 1 and 2. The surah gets its name from the 10th verse, the examined and migrant woman. This surah talks about the love for God and believers being forbidden to befriend the enemies and to regard Prophet Ibrahim as a role model. It was revealed closer to the time of the conquest of Makkah. It is said that a man by the name of Hatib ibn Abi Bulta, who out of fear for his families lived in Makkah, he wrote a letter to the Quraysh without the Prophet's knowledge. While this may have been an innocent gesture of goodwill on his part, this also could mean that he's giving away the secret that the Prophet might be coming to Makkah. The Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he receives a revelation that Hatib had given a letter to a lady called Sarah, who hid it in her hair and was already on her way. When confronted and belongings checked, she denied having the letter. But Imam Ali alayhi salam tells her that the Prophet never lies, so she hands it over. This verse warns us that you are misled and you have strayed from the straight path if you befriend Allah's enemies and think you can keep a secret from Allah, who is a knower of secrets. For know for sure that your enemies will not be satisfied unless you disbelieve also. This is an important warning for each one of us, never to compromise with the enemy and uphold tawalla and tabara at all times. May Allah give us the tawfiq to be among the true muntadirin of the awaited Imam. Ajalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Salaam. Yeah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين صل على محمد وآل محمد. My brothers, sisters, elders, Salaam alaikum. I must apologize. We've come to the Majlis expecting a full-blown Sheikh with a mama and Kaaba, but our team A is out on holiday. In fact, our team B is also out on holiday. So now the substitutes have to come to play. So you're expecting Messi, but you got, I don't know, I'm not familiar with football. Just know Messi. So inshallah, I would like to give you the breakdown of the lectures. Shamil, okay, if you can show me the slides. So what I want to do is I want to explore the Muslim thought from the founding of Islam and the subsequent centuries till today. Okay? Next slide, Shamil, please. Back. Go back, please. No, back. Yes. When Islam was founded in the 7th century, it was bordered by two massive empires. What you see is the Sassanid Empire is the Persian Empire, and the Byzantine Empire, which is the Roman Empire. These two empires, between them was a small place called Hijaz. This was a piece of real estate that nobody wanted. There was no resources. It was a people by savages. So neither the Roman Empire nor the Persian Empire took any interest in this piece of land. Within a few short decades, an army would come out of this place called Hijaz and defeat both the Persians as well as the Romans. Historians up till today cannot figure out how did this happen. The Roman Empire, established for hundreds of years, the Persian Empire, both had such strength. The Romans had their armored elite infantry. The Persians had their war elephants. Notwithstanding, the army, the Muslim army that came out of Hijaz defeated both of them. The historians, non-Muslim historians, Christian historians, are forced to write, and some of them say this was divine intervention. Imagine a Christian historian saying that this was divine intervention. There's no other explanation for how Muslims could have won these battles, but they did. Okay? So Islam is growing by leaps and bounds. The first battle, as everybody knows, was a victory for the Muslims, right? And God says to us, وَلَقَدْ نَصَرَكُمْ بِبَدْرٍ. Indeed, we helped you to win at Badr. The odds were 3-1. Muslims had a victory. The second battle, the Battle of Uhud, was a loss. But God explains, He says, وَتَنَعْزَعْتُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ وَأَسَيْتُمْ. God says, I did my part, but you people, you disagreed and you disobeyed when they went for the booty. And so, Uhud was the loss that the Muslims suffered. After Uhud, victory after victory after victory. So, for about 600 years, Shamil, can I have the next slide, please? For about 600 years, Islam grew by leaps and bounds. This was also known as the Golden Age of Islam, where the Khilafat was based out of Baghdad, right? So when you see stories about the 1001 Nights, Alf Layl wa Layl, about how beautiful and how great the Islamic Empire was, this was the time, okay? The Muslims became the masters of everything, right? If you look at agriculture, if you look at technology, the Muslims are the master. Medicine, Muslims. Ibn Sina's textbook was used in the West for hundreds of years as medicine, for medicine. The camera obscura invented during this time. Darul Hikmah was established in Baghdad, and people from all over the world came, scholars came from all over the world, and Baghdad was, you could say, the center of the world. If an alien was to come to Earth and look at it, at that point in time, he would have said that the Muslims are going to take over the world. There is no doubt about it. In fact, the Muslims also thought that we are going to take over the world. Such confidence, 600 years of success brought this confidence to them. But it was not to be. What followed was the Mongol invasion. Shamil, can you change the slide, please? The Mongols, under the leadership of Genghis Khan, or some would know him as Genghis Khan, attacked the Muslim Ummah, and they were unstoppable. It was a disaster. I want you to imagine that as a Muslim, for 600 years, you've been on top. And now, suddenly, the Mongols have invaded. Not just Mongols, not somebody from who's following another god. The Mongols were godless. So to the Muslims, this was a punishment. This seemed to them like a punishment that God has made these ungodly Mongols have come to dominate over us. When they sacked Baghdad, they burnt all the books in the Darul Hikmah. A few of these books have survived, and the Western scientists say that if this is one of the part of the Darul Hikmah, if we had the whole library right now, we would be in space. So I just want you to envision this disaster that came to the Muslims with the Mongol invasion. One of the persons affected by this disaster was Ibn Taymiyyah. Change the slide, Ahmed. Ibn Taymiyyah was living in Syria at that time, and because of the Mongol invasion, he became a refugee. Like I said, this crisis of thought happened to him, and he said, how can this be? And he came up with the idea. He said, there's nothing wrong with Islam, but we Muslims have gone wrong. All this new ijtihad, these new ideas, new way of life, this is what has caused us to be defeated by the Mongols. And so he came up with the idea of Salafism or Wahhabism. And the idea was that we should live like the Prophet lived, peace be upon him, and not do anything new. We should live exactly as the Prophet lived. We should not have any bid'ah, no ijtihad, nothing. Live like the Prophet lived, and we will be successful. Right? Ibn Taymiyyah's ideas did not gain popularity then. But a few hundred years later, it was taken up by Abdul Wahhab. And he revived the ideas of Ibn Taymiyyah. And Abdul Wahhab then had an alliance, what we would call an unholy alliance, with the Saud family. And the rest, as we say, is history. Ibn Taymiyyah handled the religious part, Ibn Taymiyyah handled war. Together, the Saud family and Wahhabism exploded with petrodollars, and we see, till today, we see the practice of Wahhabism in Saudi, in Tanzania, everywhere. Okay? So, this was the first school of thought, resulting from the crisis that the Muslim Ummah faced. And Ibn Taymiyyah, the father of Wahhabism, said, the response to this crisis is that we should go and live a Salafi life, live like the Prophet lived. The Mongols, after the Mongol invasion, the Crusades happened. Okay? Now, for most historians, this marks the end of the Golden Age. It was done. There was some revival with the Turkish Empire, but I do not want to go into details of that. The Golden Age effectively had ended. Okay? After the Mongol invasion, the Crusades started. The Christians and the Muslims fighting for Jerusalem. The battle went on and on and on. By the time we come to the 18th century, Europeans were the masters economically, technologically, militarily. They had become the masters. There was no denying it. And the Muslims, again, they were in crisis. They said, how can this happen to us as Muslims? Shamil, can you change the slide, please? Enter Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan. Sayyid Ahmad Khan was under occupied or colonized India. Ahmad Khan, his father was in the civil service, British civil service. His mother was quite religious. So he grew up having religious affiliation, but he was mightily impressed with the British. He would say that when he went to England, he was so impressed, he wrote in a letter that if you compare the British to our Indian people, they're like dogs compared to the British. So he came up with the Reformation, Islamic modernism. He said, we have to change Islam. We have to modernize Islam. When he says modernize Islam, read westernize. We need to westernize. And so he came up with these changes, and he talked about Islamic modernism. Some of the examples that you can see of what he tried to do was Iran under the Pahlavi dynasty, or Turkey under Kemal Ataturk. You see the modernism there? There was a time that the Shah would boast that the miniskirts in Iran were shorter than the ones in France. This was a point of pride for him. This is how far we have evolved. This is Islamic modernism. And so Sayyid Ahmad Khan would say that you don't have to dress traditionally. You can dress in a modern way, as long as the modesty is there in your heart. I'm sure you might have, there's also proponents now, even in our community, where we see that this kind of thinking is coming up, Islamic modernism. They say that, forget the form. That form was for 7th century Arabia. Now Islam has evolved. We don't need to dress modestly, as long as the modesty is in your heart. You don't have to pray 5 times a day, as long as, you preserve the essence of Islam, which is justice and mercy. So this was the second school of thought. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. Sir, an appellation given to him by the British. So we must respect it. So we have now 2 schools of thought. One, the Wahhabi school of thought, which says retreat into the past and live like the Prophet used to. And a totally opposite interpretation by Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, who says modernize. The third school of thought. Shamil, change the slide, please. Jamaluddin Afghani, a political activist. The name suggests that he was born in Afghanistan, but everybody wants him. The Iranis, the Persians say he was ours. Afghani says he was ours. Even the Pakistanis claim that he was ours. He was a political activist, and he said that yes, we need to modernize, but that does not mean, modernization does not mean westernization. He proposed that take from the West their technological ability. The Westerns had become very good at, because of the Industrial Revolution, they had become good at technology. Okay, inshallah, in tomorrow's lecture, I will discuss in parallel, while the golden age of Islam, what was happening in Europe, and how they became so good, and why the Industrial Revolution happened there. But for today's discussion, it's enough to know that the Europeans had become the military and technological and economical masters. And so Jamaluddin Afghani said, take from them, but not everything. Take the technology from them, learn from them, only the technology part, but preserve your values, preserve your traditions, preserve your culture, because it is superior to the Western culture and the Western values. This is a very difficult balancing act. Okay? Jamaluddin Afghani, incidentally, if you guys remember that in Iran there was the tobacco ban. It was pretty famous. The Shah of Iran had given tobacco rights to the British, and this was a business for the Iranians. And I think it was Ayatollah Shirazi who said that he gave a fatwa, and he said that people should stop smoking, and people did. People stopped smoking, and the tobacco industry went downhill, and the Shah had to give the rights back. So apparently, in my research, Jamaluddin Afghani was very strongly involved in this, and he was one of the council that instigated that we should come up with this ban. Okay. So the third school of thought is Jamaluddin Afghani. Right. So I've given you 3 schools of thought now. So how is it? So I've given you 3 schools of thought now. One is the Wahhabi school of thought. One is Sir Syed Ahmad Khan's modernization. And then you have Jamaluddin Afghani, who says modernize without westernizing. Okay? Now, it's easy to pick up a log from one side. It's easy to pick up a log from another side. but to pick up the log from in between and balance it, that is difficult. The Shia school of thought has gone with, mostly aligned with Jamaluddin Afghani's thought process. Okay, the Shias have chosen this process that we need to modernize. Yes, we cannot we cannot retreat into the past and live the Salafi life, and we do not want to modernize because our culture, our values, our Islamic laws and rules are superior to the Western laws. Okay, so in Iran is a model for what they're trying to achieve. What they have done is they've tried to modernize, as you see from their drone technology. In Iran, incidentally, after the revolution, the academic papers which have been produced in the Middle East have become #1. Before, it used to be Israel, now it's Iran. And at the same time, they have tried to preserve their culture and their values by banning a lot of social media, not allowing English to be spoken. Farsi is the main language. So in this way, they've tried to preserve their culture and their values. So that's one example. Another example would be, for example, Shias living in America, where they do not have the luxury of having a Shia state. So for the Americans, how would they preserve their culture and their values and their Islamic identity? So it's very important that they form this kind of atmosphere or environment at home, because outside you're bombarded by alien values. And I'm not just saying that it's because Western values, it's because Western values are diametrically opposed to Islamic values. So it's a challenge for them. We in Tanzania, alhamdulillah, are lucky to be in a sort of a neutral environment where we don't have the same amount of atmosphere or Islamic models that you would have in Iran. In Iran, the billboards are full of shuhada, and they'll make an extra special effort, pay money to the advertising campaigns for having to put role models, Islamic role models in front of the youth. We don't have that here, but we also do not have the insidious or the push of the LGBT community or so and so forth, because Tanzanian law is opposed to this, right? So we are lucky to be in a situation where we can choose to preserve our culture. I don't think there are any parents here who do not worry about this effect of the social media and anti-Islamic values that are being propagated. Sometimes one would feel that it's almost impossible. I come across a lot of we have a prescription from the Prophet, peace be upon him, who says that لا أسألكم أجرا عليه إلا المودة في القربى. The love of the Ahlul Bayt has been prescribed on us. And this prescription is not just one thing to counter one thing. This prescription is a transformative prescription. If you look at the life of the Ahlul Bayt, anybody who comes in contact with the Ahlul Bayt are transformed, like alchemy, like the way lead turns into gold. So if you look at Uwais al-Qarni, who had not even seen the Prophet, but he heard of the Prophet and he heard about the Prophet and his attributes, and such a love was created in his heart that he has become an example for the Muslims for the future. If you look at Zuhair ibn Kain, when he came into contact with Imam Hussein alayhi salam, just a few brief moments, he goes into the tent opposed, he comes out of the tent transformed. If you look at Bibi Fizza, having lived in the household of Bibi Fatima alayhi salam, anybody who went into that household came out transformed. A line of slaves went in to that house, and when they came out, they were transformed, not just changed, but they became the proponents of the Ahlul Bayt. Many of them were found in Karbala. Rasulullah tells us in a hadith, he says that I curse the parents of the end of times. So the Sahabis, they asked, Ya Rasulullah, will they have become a mushrik or kafir? He said, no, they'll be Muslim, they'll be Shia. He says, why then do you curse them? He says, they will not put the love of our Ahlul Bayt into the hearts of the children. This, and I've seen it, that this prescription of putting the love of Ahlul Bayt into the hearts of the children and yourselves, this transformative quality that comes about can fight off many of the ills of the modern age. Inshallah, we pray to Allah that He allows us to put this love of Ahlul Bayt into our hearts and to the hearts of our children, so that we may become the soldiers of the Imam, inshallah. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. Please recite the salawat. Inshallah, Masaib is going to recite the Masaib.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة in which we commemorate the Ayyam of Fatimiyya, the Imam of our time might be in Baqi, and he might be asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, Ya Rab, give me the permission, grant me the permission to make my duhur, to make my reappearance, so as I may go and take the revenge of those who made my grandmother Fatima look like an old lady at a very young age. The Holy Lady Fatima was a Mazluma, and after her Shahadat, she remains a Mazluma. While she was alive, after the demise of the Prophet, certain people approached her house and they came on her doorstep telling her, "O Fatima,
if you do not open the door, we will burn down the door. This is the same door that the angel Jibreel would take permission before entering. This is the same house of Wahi, the house of revelation. This is the same house that the Holy Prophet would send his salams and salutations. But Hazrat Zahra had to face this, that people came and they told her that we don't care who you are. Hazrat Zahra had to bear the pain of her ribs being broken. Hazrat Zahra had to bear the pain of losing his baby Mohsin. Hazrat Zahra had to bear the pain that an old person would come to Amirul Mu'mineen and would tell Ali, "Oh Ali, tell your wife either to cry during the daytime or to cry during the night time. Her cries are troubling us. Her cries are disturbing us." Hazrat Zahra had to bear this. Not only this, but Hazrat Zahra had to bear this fact that when Amir al-Mu'mineen built a house for her, where she would go every single day with Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein, and they would cry and they would weep over the Prophet, and Hazrat Zahra would complain about all the atrocities and all the problems that she had to go through after the demise of the Prophet. The Muslims weren't able to see this. They destroyed the house of Fatima. Hazrat Zahra had to bear this. When these atrocities, when these musibas, when these difficulties, when these problems reached its peak, Sheikh Abbas al-Qummi narrates that Hazrat Zahra would go to the grave of the Holy Prophet and she would tell, "O Prophet of God, O my beloved father, after your demise, your ummah troubled me. O my father, every new day starts with a new atrocity for Fatima. She was a mazluma while she was alive, and she remains a mazluma to date. Today when we go to Karbala, today when we go to Samarra, today when we go to Qazmain, today when we go to Syria, today when we go to Mashhad, today when we go to Qum, we see shrines, we see domes, we see Zairins coming and going and visiting these holy personalities. But my dear brothers and sisters, come to Jannatul Baqi, a possible place where Hazrat Zahra might be buried. There is no dome, there is no shrine. The Zawars and the Zairins aren't given the permission to do the ziyarah and to send the salutation on Hazrat Zahra. Sayyid Ali Raza Rizwi, may Allah protect our scholars and give them a long life. He mentions a story, and I'm sure that the story will bring tears in many's eyes. He says that a well-known scholar in Iran delivered a lecture, a Majlis, and he recited the musibah and the Masaib of Hazrat Zahra. And while he was coming down from the pulpit, while he was coming down from the mimbar, he saw from far away a person was continuously crying. He saw that the azadaris have started, the azadaris are going on, but that person, instead of doing the azadari, he is still crying, he's still mourning, he's still weeping. The scholar, the Maulana, says that I saw that the tabarruqat, the niyaz was being served. People were busy eating the tabarruqat, the niyaz, but this person was seen crying and grieving and mourning. This scholar, this sheikh, he approaches this person and he tells this person, "O person, which part of the musibah of Zahra has made you cry?" This person turns back to the sheikh and he tells the sheikh, "O sheikh, I am a doctor. I am a bone specialist. One bone breaks within our body. One bone breaks within our body. Every time a person makes a movement, he feels the pain. But oh Sheikh, if one rib breaks within your body, every time you breathe, you feel the pain. Oh Sheikh, the main reason and as to why I am crying continuously is I'm pondering how did Hazrat Zahra live with 4 of her ribs broken for 75 or 95 days after the demise of the Prophet. My dear brothers and sisters, no one knew that the ribs of Fatima were broken to this point that when Amir al-Mu'mineen was giving ghusl to Zahra, it is reported Hazrat Salman says, I heard Amir al-Mu'mineen shouting, I heard Amir al-Mu'mineen crying, and when Amir al-Mu'mineen came out of the ghusl room, I approached Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ya Mawla, Ya Ali, what is the reason as to why you shouted, as to why you are crying while you are giving ghusl to the body of Fatima? Amir al-Mu'mineen turns back to Salman. Oh Salman, Fatima never informed me that her ribs were broken. Ala la'natullah ala al-qawmi al-zalimin. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. ماتم حسين.
ایک مستور بیٹھی ہے جس کی گود میں سکینہ سو رہی ہے. آہستہ چلتی چلتی علی کی بیٹی پہنچی تاکہ بچی جاگ نہ جائے. سکینہ کو جا کر کے لیا, شکریہ ادا کیا. اے مستور, آپ کا شکریہ اس لیے کہ یہ بچی آج تک سو نہیں سکی تھی. رو کر کے کہا, بیٹی زینب مجھے پہچانا نہیں, میں تیری ماں زہرا ہوں. ماتم حسین.
فاطمہ زہرا, فاطمہ زہرا, یا زہرا, یا زہرا, یا زہرا, یا زہرا. جواب مومنہ. زہرا یا زہرا, یا زہرا, یا زہرا. اے میری بی بی, اے میری بی بی, تیرے در پہ استغاثہ ہے. تیرا ممنون میری شہزادی یہ جہاں سارا ہے. یا زہرا, یا زہرا, یا زہرا, یا تو ہمیں حفظ اور امان دے دے, اپنی چادر کا سائبہ دے دے. تیری قدرت میں کیا نہیں بی بی, تو جسے چاہے دو جہاں دے دے. یا زہرا, یا جزاک اللہ زہرا یا زہرا یا تیرا دربار وہ سخی در ہے، ہر فرشتہ یہاں غدا گر ہے، تیرے مقروض آسماں والے، تیرا مقروض ہر سکندر ہے، یا زہرا زہرا یا زہرا یا قرض مقروض کا ادا کر دے، مفلسوں کا نصیب وا کر دے، جن کی گودے ہری نہیں بی بی ان کو اولاد تو عطا کر دے، یا زہرا یا زہرا زہرا یا مجلس غم میں اشک برسانے آ سکے یا نہیں خدا جانے، کیا بھروسہ ہماری سانسوں کا، اب کہاں ہم کہاں عزا خانے، یا زہرا یا زہرا زہرا یا قلب مومن سے غم جدا کر دے، بس غم کربلا عطا کر دے، بے خطا قید میں ہے جو مومن، معجزے سے انہیں رہا کر دے، یا زہرا یا زہرا زہرا یا
یا زہرا یہ درد عزاداروں کو برسوں سے رلائے، دیا کون جلائے، زہرا تیری تربت پہ دیا کون جلائے، زہرا تیری تربت پہ دیا کون، یہ درد عزاداروں کو برسوں سے رلائے، دیا کون جلائے، زہرا تیری تربت پہ دیا کون، تھوڑی سی جگہ پاس اگر بابا کے پاتی، دنیا تیرے روزے کو نہ اس طرح گراتی، رہتے نہ تیری قبر پہ یوں دھوپ کے سائے، دیا کون جلائے، زہرا تیری جلائے، زہرا تیری تربت پہ ہے سیدہ دنیا کو حیا بانٹنے والی، لوگوں نے تیری قبر پہ چادر بھی نہ ڈالی، تربت پہ شرافت ہے کھڑی اشک بہائے، دیا کون جلائے، زہرا تیری تربت ہے، زہرا گھر لوٹ کے دربار سے جس وقت تو آئی، زینب بھی تجھے سیدہ پہچان نہ پائی. اللہ کسی کو بھی نہ دن ایسے دکھائے، دیا کون جلائے زہرات. اے زہر سرکار رسالت کو بھی تم رو نہ سکی ہو، پہلو پہ یوں دروازہ گرا سو نہ سکی ہو. کیا کیا نہ ستم تم پہ مسلمانوں نے ڈھائے، دیا کون جلائے زہرا تیری تربت. اے زہرا امت نے تیرے گھر کا ہے دروازہ جلایا، دروازہ وہ پہلو پہ تیرے ایسے گرایا، پہلو سے کبھی ہاتھ نہیں تو نے اٹھائے، دیا کون جلائے زہرا تیری تربت پہ. یہ درد عزاداروں کو برسوں سے رلائے، دیا کون جلائے زہرا تیری تربت پہ. محمد و آل محمد صلوات. فاتحہ.
السلام عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك ابن أمير المؤمنين ابن سيد الوسيين، السلام عليك ابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا شهداء كربلاء جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولاي خليل الغرباء، السلام عليك يا أنيس الفقراء، السلطان أبا الحسن علي بن موسى الرضا، كن شفيعنا وشفيع والدينا في يوم الجزاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا حجة الله يا ابن الحسن يا صاحب الزمان، السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان، أجل الله فرجك وصحن الله مخرجك وزورك. السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.